We belong to each other as a collaboration with Engineering Ministries International for this year's Seattle Design Festival. For our third session of this series, we are exploring the topic of history through the perspective of Josiah Gundersen, a dancer and writer based in St. Louis, Missouri. We hope you enjoy it.
As humans, our existence unfolds upon relics and ruins of former times and former worlds. We inhabit a culmination of histories that have preceded our current moment. But if we are grounded in the present moment, what do we neglect to remember our past? Does an accountability to our history allow us to move intentionally into the future? I find it curious how often I have been separated or disengaged from the histories of where I live. I move about my community only envisioning the current now and leaving behind everything that has brought me to this moment. The present becomes merely an idea imposed in the here and now, while the stuff of history books is contained to the past. I have constantly failed to see a connection between the present and the past, creating misconceptions between where I am and everything that came before me. But where might we be if we were accountable to the legacies from which we came, both individually and collectively? What is our place within the history of our city, our state, and our country? Does contending with these histories bring value to how we operate today? Does an acknowledgement of these histories affect how we see different groups of people today? If any, what responsibility do we have to the communities we live in? How does the act of remembrance, or lack thereof, affect the history we create today? Imagine where you are now and what it might have looked like in the past. Go back 50, 100, or 200 years. Picture all the stories that have coincided in this place. Stories of conflict, of hope, of desperation. What former relics and worlds occurred in the place you are now? What did the landscape look like? Was the horizon filled with trees and rolling hills? What languages were spoken? What nations, cultures, ways of existing have collided here? What historical events have led to both the pleasures and pains of your life? Do these collective histories affect the life and the body that you have now? Does an acknowledgement of these histories have value to how you operate today? If any, what responsibility do you have to the communities you live in? Do you make space for history to come to light? What does it mean to reckon with one's place within history's timeline? How do you embody this reckoning in how you live today? If history is a way to be grounded in the timeline of our existence, then the absence of history is a tool used to disengage us from our sense of place. A disengagement of place within our communities robs us from understanding what our roles within these communities are. Past histories cannot be contained to the past, but exist in how we operate and manage our lives in the here and now. My history and your history are our histories embedded within the continual story of the worlds we exist in today. Laurette Savoy writes that if the health of the land is its capacity for self-renewal, then the health of the human family could, in part, be an intergenerational capacity for locating ourselves within many inheritances as citizens of this land, of nations even within a nation, and of earth. Consider for yourself. What landscapes of history shape and form the city and communities you live in? What stories have been acknowledged the most, and what stories have been neglected in communicating the creation of your community? Why is acknowledging every story essential to the whole? What is required of you that you might continue the journey of locating your story within the timeline of history? Does recognizing and acknowledging these histories bring about a different awareness for how you might live now? Why is every story important to the whole? Imagine history as a line. It is a continuous line, but it's followed by an erasure. It's an erasure of collective memory loss. This line is growing, but it's not really growing. It's only moving forward while bits and pieces fall through the cracks. Without the power of reflection, we don't have the benefit of looking back and learning from what we've lost. We need that line to be clearer so that we can look back and see who we truly are. There needs to be a line. There needs to be a trail. And there needs to be a remembrance. This country is a culmination of legacies, heritages, and cultures that span centuries of time. When we recognize the multiplicity of legacies, where does this leave us? Where do we go from here? History can no longer be contained to the past, but inevitably exists in how we operate today. My history and your history are our histories embedded within the continual time frame of the world unfolding before us.
Thank you for joining us for the third session of this series. All of the programs from this past week are available on Spotify and YouTube. We'd love to hear your thoughts, ideas, and feelings about your experience. Be sure to check out the survey on EMI's festival webpage to continue the conversation. To learn more about this year's Seattle Design Festival, go to designinpublic.org and check out the full lineup of events happening August 15 through 23rd, all exploring the theme About Time. EMI is a nonprofit Christian development organization that brings together teams of volunteer architects, engineers, surveyors, and construction managers. We use our skills to serve people worldwide through the design of hospitals, schools, water systems, and many other facilities. Check out the opportunities and adventures listed on our website and reach out to us today. Together, we are designing a world of hope.